The aneurysm saved my life.
And then they're like, it's time. I lost it.
You did lose it. I could not believe it.
All right. We're going to get to all of that in just a moment. But first, I want you to know how grateful I am for today's podcast sponsor, my friends at FitAF Nutrition. They are Eastern Pennsylvania's leading meal prep company. FitAF offers meals of multiple sizes for people with various health goals. And you know what I love about this company? They use high-quality ingredients like grass-fed meats, wild fish, and locally harvested produce. And all right, for you parents on the go, they even offer family meals. It's easy to order. Go to fitafnutrition.com, place your order by midnight, and get fresh, prepared meals delivered right to your door on Sunday. Use code Leckey at checkout to get 20% off your first order.
Here we go, buddy. It's the Ryan Leckey Show.
Hey, what is going on, fam? And welcome back. It's season 2 of the Ryan Leckey Show, and I'm super stoked you're here. And I'm even more pumped up for my first guest as part of season 2. My mentor, my best friend, my BFF, my mother, my mom. She's on the couch today. And of course, you were a part of the podcast, right? Back in the day when we first started this. But the whole point as we kick off season 2 in February, which is also American Heart Month, is to really pull back the curtain and tell your story, because I've gotten a lot of messages ever since I publicly posted back in November near Thanksgiving, after we were kind of out of the woods a little bit, after you had an aneurysm repair and open heart surgery, a triple bypass. Yes. And everyone said, what happened? I want to hear a story. What went on? Where did she have the surgery? How was her recovery? What did she do? And we have a lot to unpack in it, but I'm really stoked that you're the first guest, because I think the first and foremost, we're not only telling your story, but we hope this inspires people, specifically women, to pay attention to this and get checked. Because the number one thing when I posted that photo that you had an aneurysm repair and a triple bypass, people said, she looks like the picture of health. What happened?
Absolutely. And that's the objective of this podcast, is to raise awareness and save other women.
So what did happen? Back into your story, because ever since I was a kid, we always talk about this on social media, et cetera. I always say, I got it from my mama, like my passion for fitness. Since I was a kid, you taught an aerobics class for 25 years.
20-some years.
You have eaten the most bland, healthiest food since I was like a baby. Anytime she's like, hey, let me cook, I'm like, no, somebody else can do it, right?
Somebody ordered
like
pizza.
Literally the picture of health. On paper, you look perfect, but behind the scenes, and until essentially they cracked open your chest.
Exactly.
None of us knew like how bad your heart was, right?
I didn't know either.
So let's talk about sort of the aneurysm that was the start of this whole journey that ended up being a blessing in disguise. So walk me through. I mean, you've, like a lot of women out there, regular lab work, routine checkups with your doctor. Walk me through the story.
Right, because I've been a nurse for at least 45 years. And as we said, the objective of this podcast is to raise awareness for Heart Health Month, particularly with women, because what women do not understand is that heart disease is the #1 killer of women in all age groups.
Let me chime in and play off those facts.
Please.
So according to the American Heart Association, cardiovascular disease kills more women than all forms of cancer combined.
Yes.
And yet only 44% of women recognize that cardiovascular disease is their greatest health threat.
Exactly.
Right? And people, that's the one thing that I got feedback on. They'd see pictures of you, they'd see us over the years doing stuff, and they're like, your mother's the picture of health. What do you mean she had heart problems? Because even on paper, in your blood work and your lab work, everything was impeccable. It looked great.
Correct.
So back up to the story when you started, I mean, obviously routine checkups, but the aneurysm, we said, post-surgery, it was really your blessing in disguise.
The aneurysm
being
saved my life. The aneurysm, I had an aortic arch aneurysm that I accidentally found out about. It was genetic. My father, your grandfather, had one. And when I found out about it, I, of course, had to be tested. At that point, that was probably 2016. All my measurements, everything was fine. And just to let everybody know, because of my history in healthcare for so long, I always had my routine checkups, my routine cholesterol. I was never overweight. I never smoked, never drank, was always being a nurse and being an exercise fanatic. I was always incredibly active.
Yeah, and I'll chime in and
So-
also say, in addition to nursing 40 plus years, right? You pursued your career, you got your doctorate in nursing.
Correct.
I mean, you knew healthcare inside and out. You helped run hospitals.
Exactly.
Like, so you were somebody who
Exactly.
people often joke, and we will like come back to it. Nurses are the worst patients.
Correct.
But I will say you really paid attention to your health and made sure you were getting these regular checkups, et cetera. Right?
Right.
That a lot of people do, but then there could be stuff maybe you're missing.
Because I have taken care of so many males and females in all ages with heart disease. That was really shocking to me. So I was really proactive with my health. So that's why in 2016, when I found out that I had a weakening and an outpouching of my aorta, I started getting routine testing.
And you did this because genetically, your father had
Correct.
this aortic
And
aneurysm
aortic
thing going on.
aneurysms are a silent killer because they can rupture at any time.
Yeah.
So I was being monitored.
Talk about the test you had done to detect that and to follow the size. Because the key to these aneurysms, we should say, is watching it grow, because when it hits a certain
early
level,
detection
you have to have surgery
and
because
follow through.
Right, because if it ruptures, it will
You're
kill
going
you.
to die. Absolutely.
Tell me about the test you had done.
So the test that I had done, it was called an echocardiogram. And what they can do is they can measure different portions of your heart. And with that test, they measured my aorta to see how close it was to normal. And then throughout the years, I was being followed to see how fast it was growing. And I also would have periodic CT scans of my heart to make sure that those numbers mirrored the numbers of the echocardiogram. So again, I was very diligent in doing my preventative health and getting all of my testing routinely. And then I want to say probably about 9 months before my surgery, when I was contemplating moving up here.
To northeastern Pennsylvania, right?
Correct.
Because we should point out, by the way, you were essentially living Pittsburgh in the summertime, West Palm Beach in the wintertime, right? I mean,
wintertime,
you were still
right.
working, still teaching. You were now full-time teaching, right?
Correct.
Launching nursing programs, et cetera.
Correct.
Where, you still work with the university. But I think the interesting thing is you said you were monitoring this
Correct.
so
I was
closely.
staying on top of it.
And then before you
I
moved
had-
up here, you got another test and you're like, this is getting bigger.
Yes. It grew substantially in probably about 13, 14 months. So when I did move up here full time, which was my ultimate goal for a few years, I had another test, and it was at the operative point. It had grown that significantly in such a short period of time.
Were you shocked by that?
I was incredibly shocked because honestly, I never thought I would have to have surgery.
Yeah, because as a nurse, the only way to fix an aneurysm for the most part,
Is
open
surgery.
heart surgery.
Correct. And there are two different ways to do it. So I was hoping for the not open heart way. However, when we decided upon a surgeon, and we ended up in Philadelphia, because again, I was brand new in the area. I knew absolutely nobody, let alone an open heart surgeon, and really neither did you. So a very dear, close friend of yours that you had a very trusting relationship with, a family member of hers went through a valve replacement.
Right. And we should point out, it was a close friend of ours, and this guy was an Ironman, super healthy.
Yes,
Right?
super healthy.
And I think I should have prefaced this by saying it was a decision that had to happen fast, where we had to get to a surgeon to figure
Correct.
this out. Because
Correct.
as you said, if these grow to a certain size, they could rupture and kill you at any time. And you knew
Exactly.
that, especially working in healthcare. So what I want to point out before people say, like, why didn't you have the surgery here? Why didn't you have the surgery here? The humorous part of this all is the fact that you have worked in healthcare systems in Pittsburgh, Bradenton, Florida, West Palm Beach. And I was amazed at how your friends, your fellow nurse friends, physicians you knew, people were fighting over you on where you should have the surgery. The minute people knew you need to have this aneurysm repair,
Come
Debbie,
here,
we want you to come
here,
to
come
Pittsburgh. We
here.
have you,
Right,
right? Because you worked
right.
at UPMC. see. You worked at
Yes,
hospitals in
35
West Palm
years.
Beach,
Right,
Bradenton.
exactly.
And I think before people say like, what's wrong with the care here? It's nothing, right? And we're going to get to that because you did receive a lot of care in Northeastern Pennsylvania.
Outstanding care.
But it
in
came to the
Northeastern
point where we
Pennsylvania.
didn't have time to think. We didn't have
No.
time to surgeon
We
shop.
had no time.
Because surgeon shopping is really important for people. And I have to tell you, even myself, like, right, when I had a shoulder surgery, I went to see 7 people to say, how can I make the right decision and what's the right procedure for me?
Informed decision.
So for
Absolutely.
we knew a close friend who I said, Iron Man, another guy, a picture of health person who did his homework, his shopping, had some similar stuff going on. And you're like, you know what? This guy's alive. He's thriving and doing well. And even though all of these nurses were fighting with you all over the country, have it here, we'll take care of you. Lovely. You decided, I'm going to have it at UPenn in Philadelphia. And Dr. Zito ended up being your surgeon.
Correct.
So let's walk through it because I was amazed by the time we had the appointment, how fast you had to have surgery because it was of the size where this is a big concern.
It wasn't an emergency because I wasn't
Yeah.
in a ruptured state, but it was emergent.
Yeah. And it was close to it.
And
And he's
I
like,
was-
you need to, because we thought we're going
Right.
to go in there maybe 6 months, maybe a year. And he's like, you need to get this taken care of in the next couple of weeks.
Right. And that really floored me because, as I said, and I am going to reinforce this to all women, I was asymptomatic my whole life. I was never short of breath. I never had chest pain. My cholesterol levels were always within normal limits. They were always good. I never smoked. I never drank.
And your
like we said-
cardiovascular health was insane. We would work out with you in Orange Theory fitness classes.
and I would keep up with them.
And you would put 20-year-olds to shame. So
Yes.
there was no signs where you're like, I'm short of breath, right? So let's go into
no predisposed
August
signs.
of 2023. Here you are. You have to go in, you see a surgeon. Literally, he goes through everything and says, we have to fix this. But the next step was pre-op testing, where they needed to do a roadmap of your heart to figure out
Exactly.
what the heck is going on in here. Because besides the aneurysm, I'll never forget, he said, if there's anything wrong with your heart, when you're open, we're going to do it once and we're going to fix you once,
I
right?
remember him, yes.
But here's where the other bomb hit.
And I wasn't even concerned at that point because I thought, well, there's definitely nothing else wrong with
You
me.
thought it was an aneurysm.
Right.
Tell me about the other bomb that hit you, our family, once your pre-op testing was done.
We went in for pre-op testing, and again, that was an all-day pre-op testing, and they did a cardiac cath, and I'm thinking, well, this is a slam dunk. They're not going to find anything. I'm fine. I'm totally asymptomatic. If I was having any coronary artery issues,
Oh yeah, you would
I
have been
would
short
be
of breath, all this
breath
other
or
stuff.
something
Yeah.
with all of my working out and walking. And thank goodness I was, in a bed because when the cardiac cath physician, the interventional cardiologist, told me, you have triple valve disease, that your one coronary artery, which was the left anterior descending, which in healthcare, that artery is incredibly significant. I had a 70% blockage of that artery and a 60% blockage in another, and I believe a 50% blockage in another artery. I could not believe it. I was beyond shocked.
That's why you said, thank goodness I was laying down.
Thank goodness I was
Because
lying
here you
down.
thought, I'm going to get the aneurysm repaired. My heart's
Slam
great.
dunk.
No symptoms. And all of a sudden, as you mentioned, 70% blockage in the one, blockage in the others. And this is the stuff that could kill you.
Correct. So I am so blessed because that aneurysm saved my life. Because if I didn't know I would have an aneurysm, I would have been a statistic. I would have been 1 out of 5 women die of heart disease. Without even knowing we have heart disease, I would have been a statistic. And every day I thank God for every single breath I take. Now, with that being said, when we went into the hospital,
Are we talking surgery day now?
surgery day,
So this is something I think none of us will ever forget. It's
Correct.
September 11th, 2023. The night before, I think from a patient standpoint, I want to hear your side. From the family side and the caretaker side, here I am with you, my partner, Matt, who I wouldn't have gotten through this without Matt being there, both of us.
Agreed.
Right? And the support of your friends and everybody else. And we'll dive into that. But I'll never forget the night before your surgery We go out to get dinner, and I find myself, and I don't think you even know this, and I was telling my team this today, is I found myself even on the car ride down, taking pictures of you, sitting in the car, smiling, like living your life. And even the night of dinner, we took the selfie outside, right?
I remember that.
And it hit me that day that said, this could literally be the last dinner you have with your mom. Because a lot of people, you know, now they hear of open heart surgery and triple bypass, and there are a lot of success stories, right?
Yes, there are.
But with heart surgery, there's a lot of high risk. And we'll get to
It
that
is-
in
it is a
something we
very
noticed
high risk.
visiting you,
Very
right?
high risk, correct.
That not everybody, no matter where you have the surgery, depending on the patient, their symptoms, their condition, not everybody has a successful
It's
outcome.
multifactorial.
That's where
Yes,
it hit
it
me
is.
from the caretaker side, where literally I said, holy heck, this could be the last time I have dinner with my mom. And I remember that night, we all went to sleep on September 10th, and we woke up September 11th knowing you were going into surgery, you were having your aneurysm repair,
And
you
a
were
triple
having
bypass.
and a triple bypass. And I'll never forget, this is the thing that blew me away. And I want to know where your head was in this, because we still talk about that. Matt and I always joked that if we were having any procedure, heart surgery, knee surgery, stitches, knock us out like Weekend at Bernie's, right? Like knock us unconscious, wheel us in, get the surgery done, and wake me up when I'm starting to recover, right? What
I will give you a sedative.
thanks.
I will knock you out.
What blew my mind is the night before, and I think even leading up to it, we should say you had probably a lot of nerves and stuff you hid from all of us,
Of course I did.
because you knew what was coming. Working in healthcare for 4 decades.
We know way too much.
Nurses know way too much, right?
Correct.
So I'll never forget this. We wheel you into UPenn Presbyterian on September 11th. You go in and you check in, and I'm literally talking to Matt, and I'm a mess. And this is, I had such anxiety, felt like an elephant was standing on my chest for 2 weeks when you were like recovering, right? For that time. And I looked at you, and I remember when they start wheeling you back and they start hooking up IVs to you and everything else. And I will never forget this. And I look at Matt, and I just couldn't believe you were cool as a cucumber. They must have offered you multiple times, like a lot of patients
And
in
they
surgery.
did.
What can we give you to take the edge off? You're probably nervous.
wanna give
You're
you
having
something.
open heart surgery.
Correct.
And you're literally like,
And I refused
I'm
it.
good. I'm good.
Correct.
And I get like choked up talking about it because I'm there watching you. And I'm like, how does she not want to knock herself out? Like, I'm a mess. I'm ready to like throw up and like watching this, because I knew I'm literally watching the clock, and we're there. And I'm like, they're going to take her back soon. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Right. And you didn't take anything. I'm not saying this because, hey, everybody, if you go into surgery, you don't need anything. No,
No.
by no means.
No,
I think
right.
for me, what was it was almost eerie, was watching you. And I'm like, how is she so calm, knowing everything as a nurse for 45 years of what's going to happen?
I will honestly say I knew how high risk it was. And I also knew that if I died during surgery, I knew where I was going. You know, I am a Christian. My faith is strong. I trust, I believe, and I had everything in order when I went into surgery. But many women, if you're a mother, can understand this. You will do anything for your children, no matter what age they are. Even though we are besties, you are still my son. And if a bus was coming to hit you, a mother would throw themselves in front of that bus. I did not want to take anything because it was important to me to keep you as calm as possible and for you to have that faith.
And I think I faked my calmness a little bit.
You did. You did.
And I remember our my sister Bridget was calling in.
Yes,
and I
that's
also
what I was
remember,
going to
I think
say.
we FaceTimed her.
Yes, we did.
I'm a mess, and you're still cool as a cucumber. Like, you're talking to the nurses, because I think the other thing is, like, it's like firefighters, police officers. You know, nursing. It's like a sisterhood,
Yes.
brotherhood, right, for male and
is.
female nurses.
Correct.
So you hit it off right away with the staff and nurses, and I'm a nurse, and my mom was a nurse, right? And here you are, cool as a cucumber. I am a hot mess, right? And I do remember I took a couple pictures. Here I am. I think that was my go-to, right? Get as many photos as you can. Oh my God, what's going to
Yes, you
happen
were
today?
snapping
I was snapping
nonstop.
pictures. I'm like, you got this, you got this. And then I remember I was faking it, trying to keep it together. And then they're like, it's time. And they'll talk to you in a few hours. And they wheel you back. And if you remember, I lost it.
You did lose it.
And I was trying not to let you see that. And I get emotional talking about it now. But that's where I was like, this could be it. And I think that's where the time where we live a life and we say, I'm going to do this tomorrow, I'm going to go on that vacation 6 months from now, just hit me to say like, holy crap, is there anything you wanted to tell your mom because you missed it? Right? And you were going back, and I was like, this could be it. And I was trying to be positive. I'm a positive person, but that's where it hit me. So walk me through. I remember you go back.
And it really hit me too, because when they came and said, okay, we're going to take her back now.
And the team, by the way, and in other healthcare facilities we work with here, they were phenomenal.
Beyond phenomenal.
Team at UPenn, I remember looking at the nurses, the physician assistant.
The PAs, right, the nurse practitioners, the cardiologists, the fellows, the lab techs, the x-ray techs. They were just outstanding, as well as here and
I know.
any PA.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that
We'll
later.
come back to the other hospital
Yes,
visits.
but I remember I was on the cart and they started to wheel me back.
And they did tell me too, they said, hey, we got her. There was a team of, I don't know if you remember it, 14 people in the OR with you.
Right, because I
they
remember
kind of described
getting
it, and don't quote me, but they kind of said, we kind of have a backup to each person.
And
right?
they do. They have a backup to each
So they
person
wheel you
in
back.
that OR.
Take me through
Correct.
where your headspace is, because knowing now they're going to open your chest and you're going to have open heart surgery.
Right.
Walk me through.
Because
I wasn't with you once they took you back.
No, but my biggest heartache was when they started to take me back and you were over top of me. You were talking to your sister. You were trying to hold it together. You were trying to hold your sister together because she could not make it to the surgery. That you were over top of me and the tears were just pouring out of your eyes and splashing all over my face. And that's, I will never forget that. And Matt,
He started
our
to lose
beloved
it.
Matt,
Yeah.
he was crying as well. And I was so thankful and blessed that Matt, number one, never left my side to support me. But just as importantly, he never left your side.
Yeah.
He was totally a rock. But anyway, what you did not see when they wheeled me away from you and Matt and they were talking with me, I worked in the OR for a period of time, and I worked in cardiac surgery. And I worked in the room where we had what's called the perfusion machine, which is what they hook your heart up to when they're doing surgery. It's a bypass machine because your heart is stopped.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to see that machine. I can't see that machine. So I said, if you don't mind, you want to give me a little Valium or something now? And the next thing I knew, that was really the last I remembered for probably almost 9 days.
The surgery was 10 hours.
10 hours.
And people ask,
Plus
right?
the prep before and,
Yes.
and after.
And
yeah.
I think the thing is, from the caretaker side as well, you're just waiting on the call, right? Like you want updates. And I have to say, like a lot of healthcare systems at UPenn, we were getting automated texts. So we knew patients back in the, prep room, now the operating room, the procedure has begun, blah, 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 blah. So then I remember, and in order to pass time, Matt and I said, we need to fill this day with as much as we can because I got to take my mind off it. I can't go back to the hotel and just sit.
No.
So, of course, we did what I usually do to relieve any stress,
and Bridget,
anxiety,
your sister,
right?
my daughter,
my
was
sister
calling
was
you
calling
constantly.
me nonstop, right? We'd get a text like patients in the operating room now. She'd be calling, what's happening? I'm getting the same text you are, right? So Matt and I remember we go all over Philly. We go to a gym, we work out, then we just start to fill time, hitting different stores. I'm dialing in with my team, trying to get work done. I kept telling them, work is a distraction. Keep sending me stuff, right? And then I'll never forget, later in the afternoon, I think it was like probably 4 or 5-ish.
Right, because they took me in right before 8 o'clock.
The surgeon himself, though, said, we're wrapping up on your mom because the way it works is a team approach. Somebody opens the patient, the surgeon does his thing or her thing, and then somebody
And then
closes,
a different team
right?
closes, correct.
So I think, this is something that was interesting. So, we get the call from Dr. Zito, your surgeon, who was great, and he updated us on the information, and he's like, your mom is really strong, and, we gave her, she had a triple bypass, and, basically we fixed your mom, right?
Correct.
I'm like losing it. I'll never forget. I'm in Philly. I'm on like this sidewalk crying, trying to keep it together for him. Be like, she's okay, right? And then he said, you can come visit her in a few hours, right? Because we have to finish some stuff in the OR.
Correct.
But,
Right.
my part is done and the whole team is still with your mom and we'll have the update, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward, we go up to the recovery room, the patient room, and we're thinking, and of course, those were probably like the slowest 2 to 3 hours of my life. And we knew it was
Can't
going to
even
be some time.
imagine.
He wasn't like, come on in, she's done. You can see her in 10 minutes. Like they
Right.
were very transparent. It's going to take some time. So we get up there, we're waiting. And all of a sudden it started to feel, it was longer than 3 hours. And we're becoming a nervous mess because I'm like, where is she? Right. And then, we check in with the nurses there. We got an automated text that initially we thought surgery was done. And then all of a sudden we get a text. Surgery is continuing. And I go, what do you mean? Is this a glitch? Surgery is continuing. So my sister's calling me. And what it turned out to be, which was sort of maybe another blessing after talking to your nurse friends the night it happened.
Right.
We communicate with the nurses and they said, we thought your mom would be up here a little bit ago. It does take time, right, before we bring a patient up from the OR, but she's still in there and they're just finishing a few things up and we don't have the exact updates because the team's still pretty busy. And in my head, I start losing it thinking, holy heck, what happened? Because I thought you were done, right? Surgery was wrapped. You're going to bring her up. And I'm kind of like losing it at this point. And Matt's trying to keep me together. And I remember calling those good friends, Kathy and Bob. Shout out to them. Those are the first people I called because he's been through it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I'm describing what's going on. I'm waiting for answers. I'm like, well, take the information you have now, right? And here's the questions you should be asking, blah, blah, blah. I was a mess. They were the first people I called because just probably a year ago, they were exactly where I was sitting. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was, why don't you tell the story? I mean, they were literally, your surgery.
I was closed.
You were closed.
I was
so
closed.
that means
You
they
got the
stitched
call
you
from
up
the
and everything
surgeon.
else.
They said it was going to be,
Couple hours till they bring you up.
Right. And then what happened was they discovered I was bleeding internally. So they had to reopen my chest and go back in.
And they had to stitch a bypass.
Correct.
And talking to people in the medical field, including your nurse friends, right? This is, sometimes this happens.
Correct.
And you don't realize, I guess, how small, the veins and the stitching, how all of that, how tiny it is, that this could sometimes happen. But I remember losing it in one of your friends, and I have to get to the point where nurses from all over the country are blowing my phone up all week.
Yes.
But I remember one of your friends called right when we were kind of dealing with this ordeal and just waiting for information. And she said to me, and I'll never forget, I think it was your friend Kathy, who's also a nurse for ever.
Yes.
She said the best part, if this is what's happening,
Yes.
is that your mom was never brought upstairs to the ICU where they had to reassemble an OR team.
Correct.
The team was still there with you.
Correct.
So they fixed you right away.
Right.
And they wanted to keep you longer just to be 1,000% sure before they brought you up to the ICU.
Correct.
And what I will say that the doctors and team did a great job of, even, Dr. Zito, Dr. Mary, who works with him, is the fact that they said, when you see your mom after surgery, she's going to look 30 pounds heavier.
Yes.
She's not going to look like herself, and she's going to be on a ventilator. And they tell you this, right? And you're like, okay. So by the time we did get to see you, they were great. They let us in a little after visiting hours because they had just wheeled you up, right? They had to restitch the bypass. And I'll never forget when we walk into that room and you're on a ventilator and you were 30 pounds heavier from all the fluid.
Correct.
You
The
didn't
fluid,
look
the
like
blood
you.
products. Right.
That was really tough to see. Of course, my sister's still blowing my phone up when I'm trying to get into the room to see you. And you don't remember any of this, of course, because the anesthesia and stuff. But I do remember talking to you. And I picked up a cue from the nurses. They're like, ask her some questions and see if she can squeeze your hand. And I'm like, Mom, it's Ryan and Matt. We're here. You made it. You did the hard part. You went through the surgery. Squeeze my hand if you can hear me. And I remember looking at you and you're tearing up. And I know you're out of it. You're on another planet, but you're squeezing my hand.
Right.
And you did that. And there was a little relief there.
And that's what, as a nurse and a healthcare provider, that's what we always say to the caregivers and the family, because it's really just as hard on the family.
Oh my gosh. I didn't.
Seeing your loved one go
Yeah.
through this.
Or even the recovery. I was
Correct.
nowhere near. I thought I was prepped for it.
No,
I wasn't.
No. But, the big thing is, like I always tell the family members, the loved ones, please talk to your loved one who just came out of surgery, and let them know you're here, because they can usually hear you.
Because as a nurse, I mean, you've taken care of people in emergency rooms who were in car accidents
Correct.
and other stuff, and you're like,
Gunshot wounds.
yes.
Right.
And I remember saying, Mom, if you can hear me, squeeze your hand. And your eyes were filling with tears, right? It was like the weirdest thing. I knew you were there, but you weren't there.
Right.
And you squeezed our hand. And I remember, though, kind of like clockwork, they said at 2 a.m. or 2:15 in the morning, we're going to be pulling the vent off of your mom. As long as she, meets all these criteria, she'll be off the vent by the time you see her tomorrow. She's not going to remember anything, really.
Right. And I do have to interrupt because I do remember that it was sometime, I do not remember you and Matt being there. I don't remember anything. But I do remember this wonderful male nurse that said, okay, I'm going to pull your tube. You're going to be fine. This is how we're going to do it. Something along that line. And I remember just going into a state of panic, thanking God that my hands were tied because I would have probably taken the tube out myself. Yeah. I did not want that tube out because I was afraid that I wasn't going to breathe. I was really afraid. And he just talked me through it on the count of 3. I'm going to pull it. And I remember the tube coming out. And it was plastic. It didn't hurt at all. It was a wonderful feeling when it was out. And I remembered he put oxygen on me right away. And that was the last thing I remember because I remember thinking, I'm alive. I can breathe. Yeah. So, it's so challenging as a caregiver. I can't imagine how difficult it was for you, for my daughter, for Matt, for our family, for our friends. I really feel for the caregiver, as well as the patient.
And by no means am I trying to compare what you went through, but I think to see your mom like that, right, on a ventilator and then the next day. But I think what was so difficult, right, because you were in the hospital for recovery probably like a week and a half.
Yes.
And the next day, when you kind of were starting to come back to yourself, it took days for you to kind of start getting with it because the anesthesia and you're 95 pounds soaking wet. I think what was so interesting is the pain was one thing from the open heart surgery, but the worst of your pain were the chest tubes.
Yes.
Right? And I remember those had to be in for a certain amount of time to take out the blood, the fluid, and all that stuff.
I had 4 chest tubes.
Yeah. And I remember you being so
4
tiny, you could
chest
really
tubes.
feel them.
I could not breathe.
Yeah.
I had 4 chest tubes. I had an arterial line. I had a central venous line. I had IV lines. I literally could not move.
And I have to say, too, being there to check in, we were there every day at 10 a.m. when they allowed visitors in.
Yes.
We'd get up, go to the gym early.
I don't remember anything, but I do remember there was a big clock on the left side of the wall.
Yeah.
And I would look at that clock because at like 9:45, visiting hours started at 10. Yeah. At like 9:45, 9:50, boom, in came you and
Matt. We were like banging on the door early to get in. Yeah. I think that the toughest thing coming back to the caregiver side, it's like, there was like no sleep during those weeks because for me, I literally was sleeping with the phone, right? I was the emergency contact thinking, what if something goes south? What if something happens?
Right. And as the caregiver, you were constantly in touch with your sister.
Yeah.
You were constantly in touch with our close friends.
Yeah, which I should point out, by the way, this is something that was so heartwarming. You being a nurse and working in so many places and coming back to what I said earlier is the fact that all these people wanted you to have surgery in Pittsburgh, West Palm, Bradenton, right? Like, that's why we made the decision. We did what we did when we went to UPenn, right? And we were grateful that everybody wanted you to have it like in their city.
And time wasn't on our side.
I think I think the craziest thing or the most interesting thing, it wasn't just how's your mom doing today? We had a group text with about 20 people who are in the medical field. Most of them, I want to say the majority of them are nurses.
Yes.
And they didn't want to know just how's your mom doing today? What's your mom's blood pressure? What's her hemoglobin? What's this? And I'm like, I don't know. And then the thing that caused me to tear up, you still work with Palm Beach Atlantic University in Florida. And I remember the women, the professors, the instructors from the nursing division, and friends really around the country in the medical field who you've worked with. I reached out to some of them in the group text and I said, it'd be great if you sent a video, just like wishing her well or whatever. And the videos just kept coming. And I remember almost losing it when I saw that whole team, 15 people together.
Out in front of the School of Nursing.
Out in front of the School of Nursing, wishing you well and hoping you feel better. And I'll never forget, it really, that started coming like Wednesday, Thursday. But I remember the day after your surgery, if you remember how tired you were because you didn't sleep. You hadn't
that
slept
day,
since
I don't
Sunday.
Remember.
If that, you barely probably got any sleep the night before your surgery.
Right.
I remember at one point you were so tired you thought the bed was moving from sleep deprivation.
I remember Matt telling me, I told him
Yeah.
that my bed was moving, stop my bed from moving.
Yeah. And I literally go to the nurses, and I want to say this as well. Hospitals everywhere, the foundation that builds them, right? CNAs, the food service staff,
Absolutely.
the nurses, right?
It's a
These
team.
people should be paid $1 bazillion a year for
Agreed.
what they did, right?
Agreed.
Right? It was
Agreed.
incredible how they rallied behind you. I remember some of even the CNAs who were like, no nonsense. And they're like, you're going to get up and do this. And you were up moving and you're walking and doing stuff. But I think the most amazing thing to me, what I was really inspired about when I would come to visit you, and I'm sure it would happen no matter where you had your surgery, all these nurses knew that you had your doctorate in nursing, that you were teaching nurses of the future, that you launched a nurse practitioner program. And I think one of the reasons you didn't sleep, and it wasn't intentional on their part, is a lot of them would pull up a chair and come in. Because, you know, if you're in the ICU, they have 2 patients. So they would come in and tell you about their dreams in the medical field, in nursing. And I'm like, this woman can't get any sleep because they're like, Miss Debbie, do you think I should go back for my doctorate of nursing practice? Or do you think
Should
I
I
should
go to be a nurse anesthetist?
Yeah.
And
I thought it was adorable, but I really
yes.
like, and I think, you know, when someone's taking care of your mom or your loved one, like, you know, you're there early to check in with the nurses. I was calling the overnight nurses at 5 a.m. Then I was seeing the team at like 10 a.m. with you. And then at night I would stay till 7 or 8 till the shift change happened.
you
and
were there
wanna
until 8.
And
I
you wanted to
remember
meet the
that.
night nurses. Like
Yes.
you all of a sudden become like besties with all these people. And they were incredible. And I think the thing is then, you know, you're in ICU probably for about a week, right? Because you did struggle at the first 2 days with your hemoglobin that was low. So you did have to get blood for that. And that really woke me up to saying, you know what, now that certain restrictions, of course, on gay men were lifted with blood donation, I need to step up and do my part because you had a lot of blood.
Absolutely.
And that to me, like, was nerve-wracking when you were still getting those, and then right. But I think as the week went on,
That was
and then
days
the
of those,
chest
right.
tubes came out, it was like one improvement after the next, right? And then you were, you know, eating, and I could tell you were back to yourself when you wanted your bland vegetables and nothing on it and no sauce, and I'm like, oh my gosh, right?
Absolutely.
And
Right.
I think as we move ahead to this, even because I think the story when you came home is interesting too, is I remember the day we actually got to walk you to the step-down unit because you were very active. I mean, after heart surgery, they want you moving, they want you walking out of bed,
I did not
right?
want to walk. I
Yeah.
will say that.
And
I just wanted to lay in bed and not
yep,
move.
and they got you walking.
I didn't have an option.
And I remember when Matt and I got to walk you with the nurse behind us to the step-down unit. And I'll never forget, you get in this other room where there's less noise. Because in the ICU, you don't sleep. In an ICU, there's bells, there's whistles, there's things going off left and right. You have a million wires on you. And you get to the step-down unit, and they put you in this room that was pretty warm, right?
Yeah.
And again, you're meeting all the other nurses, and they're like, oh, you're a nurse. And everyone's besties with the nurses, right? And I'll never forget, they put you in this chair that almost looked like one of those chairs people take photographs in at like fall pumpkin patches that are like 17 sizes too big for them. They put you in this chair. Your feet aren't even touching. You're cute as a button because you're still like 30 pounds heavy. You're like so cute. And I just wanted to pinch your cheeks. And never forget, your feet
Thank
aren't
goodness
touching.
you never took any pictures of me
Yeah,
looking like that.
and your feet aren't even touching the ground, and you're just, and the nurses stepped out. You're like, I can't stay in this room. It's too hot. But I don't want to complain because they're so nice. I'll never forget that. But I remember you were in this chair, and I was like, this is the biggest chair I've ever seen you sit in. And it looked like fake. It looked like it was a circus chair, right? So I remember then you were in the step-down unit for a few days, and then we brought you home probably about a week and a half after we checked you in.
And, you know, being a nurse, I just want to give a shout out to every single person in healthcare. I mean, from registration to, like I said, the lab techs to the nurses. And
The dietary folks who made sure you didn't have stuff on your vegetables and
just,
salmon.
just absolutely everyone, because that means so much in a patient's recovery.
Yeah.
It's all those little things. Life isn't one great big thing. It's all the little things that are added together. And, you know, being a nurse for so long, I just want to say I absolutely love what I do. I didn't like it every single day, but I loved it. And to all the healthcare professionals, be proud of what you do. Be very, very proud, because you have a servant heart. And it was everybody around me touching me, you know, as well as my family, as well as my friends, because without that support of you and Matt and Bridget and the whole community, this is why I moved up here, the whole community and my friends, I would have never made the remarkable recovery that I had.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I would have gotten through it. I mean, not only
right.
clients who I work with who were texting me, how's your mom, right? And people sending messages, but your nurse friends from all over the country,
Correct.
right? Reaching out nonstop. It was like I couldn't keep up with the messages. There were so many.
Right.
But I was like, wow, people care. And I think you don't realize the impact somebody in your family, especially your mom, has on people until something like this happens, right? And I even in neighborhood, when you recently moved into your neighborhood and the neighbors are reaching out and sending stuff, and that played a huge role in your recovery as well when you got home.
A huge role.
And I remember when we got home, because I'm such a light sleeper, and Matt can come sometimes sleep anywhere. He said, I'm going to stay with your mom for the first week, right?
And that was fun.
And he stayed with you. And
Taking my blood pressure at 5 a.m. in the morning.
yeah, and he was
God
doing
bless Matt.
that. And I think something else that's super important as a nurse sometimes, right? You're tough. I got this. I'm going to go home. I'm going to be fine. I don't need any extra help.
Yeah, leave me alone. I'm good.
One of the things that I think you were so grateful for is you took up allied services, home health, for an in-house nurse and physical therapy to visit you during the week.
And I remember
and
I
you
fought you.
Fought me on that. You fought me on that because you said, you know what? I'm not going to need this. I'm going to be fine. But
exactly.
Part of your recovery to have a home health team as well, in addition to your friends caring for you, and then another nurse friend from Pittsburgh, Teresa, came up and stayed with you for a week.
Right. Bridget, my daughter.
Bridget,
came up and stayed.
And they came during the hospital too to visit and everything. I think the thing is that's something that I would tell people, no matter how strong and tough you are, if you can get that covered or if your insurance offers that or whatever, for you that was huge.
Give yourself every single benefit in your recovery.
Because for you had shoulder mobility
I had a
issues.
frozen shoulder when I came
So you were able to get
surgery.
physical therapy at home.
Yes.
The nurses from Allied Home Health were visiting you. And I'll never forget when you're like, I know I fought you on this, but thank goodness I signed up for this. And I remember that.
I ate my words.
Yeah. And then I remember after that, like after the home health was done, you were still getting like physical therapy. Yeah.
So valuable.
Yeah.
So valuable. When I wasn't feeling well, the registered nurse would put a call out to the doctors for me that I actually didn't have to do that myself. And when you've gone through 10 hours plus of open heart surgery, everything is an effort. And for her to take that off my plate and say, I got you, I'm going to take care of this. And then I remember the physical therapist coming and saying, okay, now we're going to do some stairs today. And I'm like, no, we're not.
But I think what's interesting,
I did
come
with
back to
her.
the stairs though, because I think this is what people to know. Here's a woman who's the picture of health. The first time you could barely make it up the steps.
And I only went halfway.
Yeah.
I couldn't even walk out to my driveway and back because my daughter Bridget tried to take me on a little walk, and just the fact of putting a foot outside, and I thought I will never be myself again. But praise God, I'm actually better than I went in. And like I said, to the women of the world out there, I was totally asymptomatic. And I know as a woman, our biggest fear is that C word, it's cancer. But you have to be proactive and think about your other risk of disease, particularly heart disease, which is the #1 killer.
And as a nurse, what's the conversation women should be having with their providers to get that checked? Because for you, your lab work was great.
My
On
lab
paper,
work was great.
you were the
Everything
picture of
was
health.
great.
Is it a
Right.
calcium score test? Like, what would you say?
The biggest thing is have transparency with your healthcare provider, be it a physician, be it a nurse practitioner, be it the physician's assistants. They are experts in the field. Be transparent because
Especially if you have a family history of aneurysms, et cetera.
right,
Yeah.
because women experience and exhibit very, very different symptoms than a man does related to cardiac disease. Women experience more abdominal pain, back pain, neck pain. And yes, we can still experience shortness of breath, somebody, the tightness in our chest, but our symptoms can be relatively unique. So if you're feeling tired or you're just not feeling like yourself, don't brush it off. Do not brush it off because you don't want to be that 1 in 5 statistic like I almost was. Be totally transparent with your healthcare provider. And above all, have those routine checkups.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, coming back to what you said about being transparent, having the conversations, is the fact that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes there.
You do not know
Right.
what's going on behind the scenes. And we should probably do podcast number 2 related to this so we can talk about various forms of heart disease and how
and
they
there is-
hit.
right.
Like women, most women do not know that if you, after menopause, you're more at risk for heart disease because of the hormone change. If you have an early menopause, you're more at risk for heart disease. If you have your menstrual cycle at a young age, say like age 11 or younger, you're more of a risk of developing heart disease.
You're stealing all my facts.
Oh.
No, it's
Okay,
all good.
well, I
but I
can
was
just-
going to say,
yeah.
but playing off of what you said too, the American Heart Association also stresses among females 20 years and older, nearly 45% of them are living with some form of cardiovascular disease.
Yes.
And less than 50% of women entering pregnancy in the United States have good heart health. But what I wanted to
Correct.
mention when we say about like women, sometimes there's a lot of research because you got that mom strength or that female strength, right? You ignore the symptoms.
We do.
Right? So,
We
I'm
do.
tired, or I'm just, it's just,
And we brush
and
it
you
off.
brush it off.
And we brush it off. Oh, I've been doing extra cleaning.
Right.
Oh, I'm working. I'm running nonstop. When that could not be the factor at all.
And the one thing I wanted to say, coming back to what I said earlier, right? Every outcome from any surgery is always different. It comes to what were the pre-existing conditions, what's the patient's story, right?
Correct.
And what I will never forget that stood with me is every day we were visiting you in the hospital, right? You were getting better. In the room next to another guy, an older gentleman in ICU, and I don't know what his heart condition was. I don't know what his backstory was. I don't know his medical history. He wasn't getting better. And I remember seeing him on a vent for days, and I'm like, this isn't right. My mom came off a vent the other day, and I think they had surgery on the same day. And I remember seeing his kids who were like my age and their family saying, hey, how's your mom doing today? Right? And I said, we're taking her to the step-down unit. She's progressing. And at the time, I don't think I could really see their father because there was the curtain pulled a lot and the family was in there. And I said, how's your dad? Like, any updates? And they said, we're giving him his last rites today. Yeah. So you were walking out of there and they were saying goodbye to their loved ones. And I think to me, that was really like, wow.
It's an eye-opener.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to raise awareness, to do everything you can to proactively take care of your health.
Yeah. And I think, Mom, coming back to what you said, because I know we could talk about a lot of this stuff for a long time. I think what was interesting when you did come home up to week 8, you were rocking it, right?
Yes.
Your recovery was going well. You're going on walks.
I was feeling
amazing.
on top of the world.
And this is what comes back to having healthcare here. We
Now,
want to
it
point
wasn't
out too,
easy.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Right,
And
but
I
I
want to
would-
point out between the Allied Services Home Health you received, and then you also saw several cardiologists within, our healthcare systems, Geisinger being one of them. Wonderful team.
cardiologist,
You had a
wonderful.
little hiccup, not related to your surgery, but something
we
else
thought
cropped
it
up,
was.
and we thought it was related to the surgery. Like it was right after Thanksgiving, where all of a sudden we said, what the heck is going on? Because we thought
It was a big blip in the road, a huge, huge blip in the road. And
you would be at home. I think we should set the scene when we say, oh, she was doing great up to week 9. You would be at home watching television, right? At
reading a
night,
book.
winding down, reading a book, chilling with your dog. What would happen?
my blood pressure skyrocketed to like 200 over 120.
Which is like stroke level.
Correct. And I called you and I said, I think you need to take me down to the emergency room like now. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I am calling the ambulance and I will meet you down there.
Yeah. And that was the best thing. And I would stress to people, and after working, in television, doing these types of stories related to heart health, et
Don't
cetera,
wait it out.
don't have somebody drive you there. If you're
No.
experiencing chest pain, anything related to heart, you think you're having a stroke, because one, you're going to get into the ED, emergency department a lot faster, but two, they have the tools and the resources in the ambulance
Absolutely.
to start proactively treating
Absolutely.
you. Because there were times
Don't be a hero.
you had 3 trips to an emergency room in an ambulance.
Yes.
Right? Because this happened, and all of a sudden we're trying to figure out what's going on. And you did have, I think,
And I was
2
hospitalized
stays
twice.
at Geisinger, and the team was phenomenal.
I couldn't have asked for a more thorough team.
Because we're thinking something's related to your surgery, something happened.
Right.
Which I just want to say, in case you stop listening now, it was not even related to her
It
surgery.
wasn't even related to the
but
surgery.
wait until you hear what it actually was in a moment. You're in Geisinger. You had 2 stays there. They ran every test under the sun.
Every test imaginable.
Your heart looks great. You had MRIs, CAT scans. They're looking for strokes. Anything you could think of, they're like, everything's great.
My blood pressure was very high.
Because it would go from a normal level. I mean, for you, your new norm might have been like 110, 113, right?
Right.
And it would just skyrocket to 200, and nobody knew what was going on. You would feel flushed in the
I
face.
was on multiple
Medication, right?
blood pressure medications. And it was just random. And it was just so frustrating to me because you can't go out and have a life because, number one, you don't feel well. Number two, you're afraid that your blood pressure is going to skyrocket. And when it does skyrocket, you have to sit there. You want to sit there and not move and pray that it comes down.
But also because it was near 200 with his stroke level, we were getting you to the hospital, right? So fast forward, you see multiple people in and out of stage. You have every test done. We know.
Every single
We know
test.
your heart was great.
Every single test.
So let's tell everybody what it ended up being. That I think this is something probably people either ignore or they don't, it's not caught right. And I should say it was a doctor, because we went to some other hospitals, and because you were near my house at the time when it happened, and I lived closer to Lehigh Valley Health Network, right? So I said, okay, if it's this bad, we just got to get to the closest hospital.
Right.
It was an emergency room doctor who diagnosed you with
Vertigo. Extreme
vertigo. And that's what was causing these insane
blood pressure spikes.
And I'll never forget, I think it was
to the point where you can't see, you can't walk.
oh my gosh, you were so dizzy, you were nauseous. It was just like, it was crazy.
Correct. And again, I learned something as a nurse, that this occurs not so infrequent in people. So I am seeing a phenomenal ear, nose, and throat doctor now who is really helping me. I'm on medication.
Dr. Pritchik. You can give the guy a shout out.
Keith, yes. And again, I'm getting my life back.
And I think it was Dr. Sadi was his name at Lehigh Valley Health Network, who said, you have vertigo.
Extreme vertigo.
He literally looked at, after working with you a little bit, minute and a half, did a couple quick tests on you. He's like, that's what it is. And we were ready. Oh my gosh, do we need to go back to the surgeon? Do we need to do this?
We were going back to UPenn that day. And now, remind you, I've been a nurse for what, like 45 years, maybe plus. I never thought of that.
And I remember leaving the office multiple times to take you to the hospital or meet you at the hospital if it was that bad with your blood pressure. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, as a caregiver, right? You're like, when's this gonna end? You just want your mom to get better.
Yeah.
And it was like all the time. It felt like it was like every few days, right?
It was constant for probably about 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
Yeah. And it was scary. And the minute, though, you were diagnosed with extreme vertigo,
and
right?
I was put on the correct medication.
Correct medication. Because for a while, a lot of people, which is normal, they think, we got to adjust your heart medicine. We got to tweak stuff. We got to do this, right? Maybe it was that. And it wasn't that.
Right.
But now you're getting closer to being closer. I think you still have several weeks ahead of you to 100%.
I still have, right. I'm not 100%. I am 70%. And
but
70% is great.
But what I think is so fascinating about it, ever since you were diagnosed with vertigo, you have not had to take a single blood pressure medicine.
Correct.
Because when your pressure was going from like a 113 to 200, some doctors, they were starting to play with your medicine, thinking, okay, we need to adjust this. And if it hits a certain level, take this medicine.
Which makes certain sense.
Totally makes sense, right?
And honestly, like I said, the healthcare providers at Geisinger left no stone unturned.
None.
I mean, they just ran every test known to medicine.
Right. But I think that also helped us because as we progressed along and thinking, do we need to go back to a surgeon, right?
Correct.
You had all the tests done, and then we found out what it was.
But again, this is another shout out to women. Do not ignore your symptoms. Yeah. Do not ignore your symptoms. You know, you do have to advocate to yourself, and you have to be totally transparent with your healthcare providers.
Yeah. And I think, and I know we kind of sped through the recovery because, you know, we talked about your vertigo, which is still kind of ongoing, and you're hoping to wrap that up.
It's ongoing.
But at least you found out what that was. I just think the amazing thing for you, what was the biggest lesson you took away from this surgery that, you know, you could have lost your life because not everybody survives these types of surgeries?
I could have been one of those statistics. Is that live your life.
Because we talk about this. There's a lot of times, right, that we're
live your life. Life is not all about work. At one point, I thought it was. It is not. It's about family. It's about developing friends. It's about keeping friends. It's about nurturing yourself. It's about living your life.
And I think we talk about living. I remember with you, after you survived the heart surgery and you being in ICU in that week, you said, you know what, I'm done waiting to take vacations and do all that. Because all the time you say, oh, we'll take a vacation next year. Oh, I don't know if I want to go. I'm going to do this, right? Because you're one of the few, right? You always say saving money makes you happier than spending it.
Yes, saving
so you
money
love
makes
to
me
save,
happier than spending.
But I do know I said, like, the time is now.
Right.
And I think that for you was the most eye-opening thing. And I hope the takeaway is this for American Heart Month, men, women, if you notice something going on, talk to your provider,
Please.
get checked, right?
Please.
Because here's
Do
somebody,
not let it go.
you know, I look at you, picture of health, fitness fanatic, healthiest eater I've ever met in my life. And that was even way pre-surgery. That was since I
Correct.
was a kid, right? Like
Right.
we never had junk in the house. I mean, you
Right.
were diligent on that.
Right.
And then you were also one of those people living with serious cardiovascular
I was
disease.
1 out of 5.
And,
Yes.
and no idea.
Right. And, you know, control what you can in your life. Control what you can in your life. Mine was just genetics. But I would have thought that it would have shown up somewhere in my blood work or something. But I was totally normal until I had the cath and found out I haven't been normal for a long time.
Yeah.
So be aware. Be close to God, your family, your friends. Live your life.
I love you.
I
The
love
best.
you too.
Any other final thoughts?
I do not, other than I would like to do another podcast and tell women what to, because I'm a nurse.
Now she's on
Yeah,
fire.
nothing-
She's
yes,
on fire.
Now I'm on
Sometimes
fire.
I got to talk you into it. And then when you get here, you're like, all right, let's do another one. Let's do
Okay.
another one.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
But I have to say, I think it's, you know, the people who help get you through this, it's your friends, it's your family. But I think the people who are the caregivers, right? I'm so grateful. I mean, my team who kept things afloat when I was away, the clients I worked with who even checked in on me, my mom, right? And just to feel the love. And then when you went through something like that, you're like, wow, my mom made an impact on a lot of people. Like to hear from nursing teams from Pittsburgh and Bradenton and West Palm Beach, and it's like nonstop check. I'm like, wow. And they're all like, when can we come up? And I'm like, please, because I remember some days I'm like, did you eat today? Did you do this? And you're like, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
That nurse toughness kicked in. But I think it was eye-opening from a caregiver standpoint, but also for you, for a patient. All right.
That we can never stand alone.
Yeah.
The chain's stronger the more hands we hold.
And with that, that is season 2, episode 1 of the Ryan Leckey Show with my mom. Thanks for being a part of it. Take care.